My name's Pete Liston, and welcome to this episode of the Veteran Community Podcast, where I'm talking to Angela Harper, PR specialist. Now, Angela's had an amazing career as a aviation medic. Then she moved into a journalist working down in Canberra in the press gallery, through to running for the Senate in Queensland with the Jackie Lambie party. And finally, she runs an amazing consultancy called harpr. So if you've ever wondered why PR matters or how to get that, lobbying into government, then stick around and listen to this episode with Angela Harper. See you soon. Hello, everybody. Pete Liston here, and welcome to another episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast, where I've got Angela Harper from harpr. G'day, Ange. How are you today?
Hello, Pete. Thanks for having me, and g'day to everyone listening.
Ange, I'm super excited to talk today. Not only are you a former aviation medic, but you're
Yeah.
also a former journalist or current journalist, PR specialist, ran for the Senate in Queensland, and budding amateur comedian. So we've got heaps to talk
Oh,
about.
no. Yeah, we do.
Well, Ange, we've only just crossed paths with each other a couple of months ago when you joined the board for VEDX. And since then, we started working together, and I'm really learning heaps about PR, what is government relations, what is corporate relations, and all the different. So really interested in getting some of your insights for the business community. But let's go back. I always like to start. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Western Victoria on a property and basically got out of there as soon as I could.
Brilliant. You had enough to just big city
Oh,
girl lost in a country kid's body.
I think when you grow up in an environment like that, everyone has your future mapped out, saying that you're going to marry a farmer, you're going to have a bazillion kids. And
Yeah.
I really just thought, well, I'd always wanted to be a journalist, but I really knew that there was a big world out there and I could do something more. And my brother, in fact, had joined the army as an engineer. So
Ah.
his tales of all the amazing things he was doing and all the travel really excited me.
How much older was he than you? Or is
He's
he than
6
you?
years older. Yeah, he's
Ah,
six
okay.
years older than me. Yeah.
So enough to be well entrenched and have some great stories to tell, and jumped in on his coattails.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually working as, I don't know if you call it a journalist, but I was running the local, like very small newspaper, which, has been my passion since I
Yeah.
was, in preschool to be a journalist. But I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to get away from the farm. It was pretty
Yeah.
isolated. And yeah, my brother sort of opened that door to possibilities for joining, the ADF.
So tell us, what was your pathway, and did you do Kapuka or RMC?
Yep. So I just did Kapuka. So
Yep.
I just wanted to serve my country, have a big adventure, get away from the farm. And so I just planned 4 years to join. And then, yeah, I guess we can get to that later. But that plan didn't work out as I had planned.
So what job did you apply for when you get in?
So when I initially went to Kapuka, I actually did all the testing that they do, and I was initially drafted off to another corps and had a
Mhm.
very traumatic time there. But it worked out quite well for me because then I was offered basically to go anywhere I wanted to.
Yep.
And so I chose medical corps, which my whole family laughed at because I used to faint at the sight of blood. Um, and yeah, so I went off to medical corps, and lucky for me, I ended up in aviation, which was just friggin' amazing.
Aviation medicine. Tell us a little bit about that. This is are you more of a what do you call it, an A&E kind of role, like an emergency response role, stabilization, resus? What's it like? What's life like as an aviation medic?
Yeah, so the first thing that I noticed when I was sent to Oki, so I was only sent there for a short period because one of the other people had hurt their backs and I was just sent to kind of fill in. It's just the professionalism of people. And look, on the flip side, it's a really serious job and you can
Absolutely.
die really quickly, right? So, as I found out, as my time went on, but I'm still here to tell the tale. But just the level of professionalism was really great. And also the people who'd been there for a while who I worked with, including medical people and aviators and all the logistical support that goes
Mm.
around keeping an aviation unit flying. They just were so willing to help. I guess they depended on us as well for their
Yeah.
health and well-being. But it was great. It was the most amazing, one of the most amazing experiences I've had in my life. And
Now, as
sorry,
an
it
after,
is EMST, so emergency management of severe trauma. So, we these days we refer to ourselves as aviation paramedics, which is
Mhm.
easier for people to understand. But you sort of level 4, so paramedics level 5, level 4 is
Yep.
advanced life support. So you're right up there, and then obviously you've got the aviation medicine element onto that. All about altitude sickness and injuries and all of those things. So you learn about all of those as well.
As a capability, are you attached inside like to the airframes themselves, and then you support the airframe crew or the air crew, or are you attached more like, let's just say there's Talisman Sabre going on and there
Yep.
is an incident out Bundies, and that you can go out there and support the warfighter from a emergency perspective?
Yeah, so there's an entire mix, exactly what you've said. You can do all of those things. So at Oki, I was posted to the the headquarters. I
Yep.
forget what it's even called now. It's been that
Yeah.
long. Um, so I was posted to the headquarters, but in fact, my first AME gig to Shoalwater Bay for Talisman Sabre, as it was probably called back then, was with 171 with the Hueys for 24-hour AME support. So you would get detached out to the squadrons, but they also had their in-house medics as
Yep.
well, who were within the squadron and posted to like one aviation regiment. Up in Townsville, when I was posted to 5AB, you are actually dedicated to a squadron up there.
Got it. Got it. This is cool. So, I'm still one of these big kids who, when an F-18 or an F-35 flies over, I haven't had enough of them yet. I still have to look. If I see tanks and, ASLAV or whatever the new things are in the army now, I always get a little bit excited. And helicopters is that. So I went and did flight screening when I was at RMC, and made a terrible choice. I got accepted into Aviation Corps and made a terrible choice not to go.
Oh my lord.
Anyway, we all make these
Hindsight's great. Yeah.
I know, but there's relationships in our lives and the decisions we make for those that we love at the time. But anyway, these things happen. But I love these serendipitous moments that, just create these opportunities for us. It's something I
Yeah.
talk about nearly every pod, but there was that, whatever happened in the first corps you went to actually created this sliding doors moment to go and do something that's one of the best times of your life.
Yeah, and it was a really crazy juxtaposition for that because I had a really horrific trauma, as we call them these days, in that first posting
Yep.
as an IET. But then it
Mm.
just opened the door to where I ended up. And so I I consider I only look at the positives of it, that
Yep.
was meant to be and it was a good thing that happened. I don't sort of, cry into tissues every night about it.
Mm.
I look back on it and say I had a beautiful, amazing career. I'm still friends with a lot of the guys who I worked with. And in fact, at the Legacy Ball on Saturday night, there were quite a few aviators there, and I was chatting away. And one of my former pilots, Chinook pilots, came up, and I was hugging him and everything. So yeah, it turned out to be wonderful.
Just, I don't mean to name drop, it wouldn't have been Kevin Humphreys, would it?
It was Kev. Yes,
Ah,
yes.
anyway, I've got Kev's coming up on a pod, but little random just like story. But Kevin and I grew up in the same town, and
Oh
he
wow.
like of Katoomba in the Blue Mountains, and I was in the same age as his younger brother. And funny enough, even though I've followed Kev, like he's far too humble to say it, but he is I guess a superstar of the army is a terrible term, but an incredible officer with an amazing career. And we've only caught up for the first time in real life a couple of months ago. So I'm
Oh
super
wow.
excited to talk to Kev, in a couple of weeks. And well, amazing human. Anyway, that's for another pod, another time.
Yeah, he was a great pilot, and that's another thing with aviation. Most of the guys were really respectful.
Mm,
I guess what you give out is what you get back as well,
yep.
but they're pretty respectful, and I really appreciated that. And it was great at the VEDX drinks that
Yep.
night down
That's where
near
I
the
met him for the
bridge.
first time.
Yeah, so Megan was there as well. So
Ah,
we were all posted in Townsville together, and like Megan was pregnant like when we were there, and now their
yeah.
kids are grown up and joined the army and all that stuff. So it was
Wow.
actually really great to see Megan again as well.
So look, and I'm not looking to associate your age with anything here at all. But how long did you do in the army?
So I say a decade. It was sort of
Yep.
with, maternity leave and that. It ended up being about 12 years. But
Yep.
so we, I won't go into who I married or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's not important. But we were posted to Fort Rucker, in fact, with Tony
Oh,
Fraser
wow.
at the time. And when we were over there, I said, I'm meant to be a journalist. What the hell am I doing? Okay. So then I started my journalism and PR degree, and
Yep.
we were posted back to 5 Ave. And so at the time, I had a husband who was away 9 months of the year because he was aviation as well. I was doing my role as a medic,
Mhm.
field force medic, and I had a young child, and I was doing my degree, the equivalent. I did it the
Wow.
equivalent of full time on dial up. So
Oh, dial up.
yeah. So USQ actually. I've spoken to them a long time since, and they actually said to me that I was one of the first students to go through where we did, online.
Online remote learning. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, so after such what is the defining moment that, hey, military's been good, love it, ups and downs, but it's time to move on? What was that? Was it the family? What was the inkling, or is it finally hitting that I need to go back to my purpose here?
Well, it wasn't until we were over in um, Alabama where I actually took a year's leave without pay, and I just went to the
Mhm.
gym twice a day. It was amazing. I
Nice.
did try and get a job, but my green card took months to come through. So then I
Yeah.
just kept going to the gym. Um, it was there where I had time to sort of remember that I've wanted to be a journalist. As I was reading the newspaper at 5 years of age, to my
Yeah.
older cousins and siblings and everything. Dad always had the ABC on. So I think it was like some kind of subliminal, learning. So yeah, when we were over there, I had time to just not be caught up in the fun because it's pretty intense,
Yeah.
being in that environment and being ready to go all the time. And I just had time to remember where I actually wanted to go and what I wanted my career future to be. Not that there was anything wrong with what I was doing, but they kept saying, you got to do your sergeant's course, you got to do your sergeant's course. And I was like,
Yeah.
why? I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not here for that. And when we got back, I do have to say, I almost died quite a few times. And I'm not going to tell any stories out of school because I don't actually know what I can talk about. I imagine there's probably not many. But, you know, once you get a small child, you know, and you realize that you wanted to chase this dream. So I say I had the best job in the world in the army, and then I went on and did my dream job. So Timor had happened while we were overseas, and I'd been over to New Guinea a number of times, like a lot of times, but Timor had happened and we got back, and then all of a sudden it was like, you're deploying to Timor. And I said, wait a minute, like, it was exciting, and I lined up all the ducks to go, but my husband was meant to go too. And I just said, look,
what do you do with the babies?
I've almost died so many times. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's just the environment that
It's just
you're
a job.
in. You know,
It's the job.
it's 1 second and you're screwed, right? So I just went, wait, you know, have I got any more lives left in the bag? And I just said, because I worked with a heap of guys, obviously, and I just went in and spoke to my boss and said, look, I'm happy to go, but I want to do this next part of my career. I've given over a decade, but I'm really worried about coming back. And I really do want to stay around. And so he just said, look, just put it out to the other guys, see if any of them want to go. And of course, they're all fighting each other to go.
Yeah, please.
So, you know, it wasn't like me putting a deployment on to someone, because I still did the other, you know, local stuff where you went away. But I just knew that I was getting out, and I'd really focused on that next chapter of my life, I guess.
So tell us about so you've done your degree, you've transitioned out of army. How do you start as a journalist? Is it like you go in as a cadet and you make coffees and do the mail run, like the old Sydney Morning Herald days, or?
So generally, back when I went in, cadets do like an apprenticeship. So they go into the newsroom and they learn their trade in the newsroom. Because I was
Not
a degree.
Got it.
No, generally though, it's probably different now because everything's far more competitive and harder. So you'd want, you know, you've probably got doctors going now, you know, have done their doctorates. There are quite a few lawyers who become journalists as well, but so I did my degree, and I just did, and I was lucky because I was married. So I did heaps of like intern free work for people doing PR, and then we were posted to the flying school at Tamworth. So I'd been doing PR in Townsville once I got out, and then for sports organisations because I loved sport. And then we got posted to Tamworth, and I ended up the editor there, Greg, God bless, or God rest his soul. I sent him my CV, and he loved that I'd been in the military. And so I ended up with a job there as managing editor, first off, running like the weekly country leader. And given that I grew up on a farm, I sort of fitted right in. And I sort of went into that probably with a military mindset. The paper hadn't been in budget for 3 years, and I got it back in budget within 6 months and all of that. So that was really great. And then one of the biggest gifts of my life was we were then posted to Canberra, and the editor-in-chief of Rural Press, as it was back then, Tony Gillies, he knew me from Rural Press, and then he had gone across as editor-in-chief at AAP. And so he offered me work in the press gallery in Parliament House in Canberra. So I was extraordinarily...
What's that moment like? That feels like an I've arrived kind of moment. Like I'm on because, you know, it's country paper, fantastic, you know, little local newspapers, you know, they're impactful and they're important for the community. But the press gallery, you know, it's part of the lifeblood of the nation, you know, in terms of, you know, having a finger on the pulse of politics. What did you feel like the first couple of times you walked in the door?
I've got to be honest, most things in my life, and maybe I don't do it consciously,
Yeah.
but jumping out of helicopters and rescuing people when you have to do that, even looking after their health and well-being, and some people in really bad conditions in barracks, everything else is sort of underneath that.
Just
Like,
like, I got this. I just walk and
it's,
do it.
but it wasn't even like an ego thing. It was, I felt so amazed that I had the chance to go there and that
Yeah.
Tony Gillies thought that much of me to put me forward, right? And my first night in that bureau was federal budget night.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was
Yeah.
also a baptism of fire. So I didn't go down into the lockup or anything, obviously. So myself and another journalist, Peter Jean, we stayed in the bureau and we filed normal stories, you know, for that night. And then the next morning, the bureau chief he called me in and he goes, oh, you know, Ange, come in here. And I'm like, oh, fuck, Harper, you're in the shit, you know. And anyway, he goes, I read your stories from last night. And I said, oh, yes, yes, yes. And he goes, you wrote 5 stories. And I said, yes. And he goes, they're okay. You can stay. And I went, oh, thank you. Oh, you know,
Oh,
and sort of scrambled back to my room. I do have to say the transition to a newsroom, and I know people might laugh who have been in the military. A newsroom is military light, if I can. I
I
used to
feel
say,
like it's, yeah.
yeah, I used to say aviation was army light. You know,
Yeah.
like I know it's an arms corps, but you know you're walking around your flying suit with your powder puff blue beret on. You know, it's sort of army light. Um, a newsroom is military light, you know, so people are shouting orders. There is no, you were just humiliated, not in a nasty way, but it's just like, this is shit, you got to redo it, blah, blah, blah. Don't you know this? Stop writing this way. I'll tell you what. And because I was a soldier effectively still,
Yeah.
I just got on and did it. So the AAP family has been, Australian Associated Press family, has sort of been everlasting to me, and I'm still friends with a lot of the journalists who I work with. So, you know, which um, did a favour for the Oasis Townsville, you know, a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
for that story. So, you know, that was my former news ed for AAP. She was the national news ed.
Well, I think I've never been in a newsroom, but I can imagine it must be like an ops room during contact or something like that. Obviously, we're not sort of you know, there's no lives on the line or anything like this. But like you said, that intense.
Well, there
Right,
are. There
we've
are
got 14 minutes
reputations
to
on the
go.
line, right?
Yeah, 14
Yeah,
minutes to go
and
before we go to print or something like that. Get this shit out the door.
Well, I was Newswire, so it's just rolling and it goes out to
Oh,
all
yep.
broadcast, print, online publications. But you are right. So the deadlines and the deadline environment suited me as well, given what
Mm.
I'd done in the army. So, for example, when I was chief of staff for AAP up here in Brisbane, I also was state finance correspondent because they didn't have one. And I crazily offered to do it, and I was hopeless at maths. But if you were, say, door stopping the federal treasurer, um, you know, you had to hold up your phone so finance desk could listen in because things that they snap, it's called a snap. If he said something that affected the way the dollar traded
Mm.
or affected, you know, the share market, that had to be snapped straight away. Now, as soon as he finished, depending on how many snaps there were, so you'd talk straight to the finance editor, you had to file 2 pars or 2 quotes within 2 minutes
2 minutes.
of that snap. So I quite often would sit straight down in the gutter or on something, and I'd be phoning through my copy to back up what had just maybe
Oh, this
affected
is
the way the
cool.
dollar traded or the
Yeah.
market traded, right? So it was full on. But given my foundation, I just didn't even break a sweat. And I'm a little bit on the spectrum, as people who know me know. So I could listen to what they were saying, know what was going to affect that straight away. So it's a bit of a pattern thing, and just do it.
Just
And
get done.
because of that military training with hard work, and you know, I know I didn't go to war, but you know, that pressure under fire when you're actually performing, um, evacuations, or you're working on a patient in barracks or something like that, where you've got to remain really calm. It just really worked well for me. It was really a great pairing for me.
I think that's brilliant. And I think you're being far too probably humble, just glossing over, your journalistic career here from starting at AAP, to what did you say, our chief of staff up there in Brizzy.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about writing now? I'm a waffler, which is probably okay for a pod, but it's terrible when it comes to writing. The art of copy and the art of, if I had more time, I would write less. Were you a natural writer, or is this something that has, comes from training and effort?
Uh, well, obviously, I grew up reading, listening to news and all that. But no, when I first got into a newsroom after doing my degree, it was like I was like, what the hell was that degree for? You know, you got a month to get an assignment in on one radio broadcast script. Holy shit.
Yeah.
You know, you just, my record at AAP, and that's Newswire, so fast, short. Your story, if you wrote over 400 words in the Canberra Bureau, you would get put up, your story would get printed out and put on the wall of shame. So I'm saying
Yeah.
it was pretty hardcore. But so my record, it was in Brisbane, you know, because Brisbane was my final post as a journalist. But my record was 14 stories in one 7.5 hour shift. So you're just pumping it out. You're
Yeah.
a sausage factory. So yes, it is training. You do learn, and you're forever learning. And for anyone, no matter what you do, you always should be open to learning, and you always should
Mm.
be open to being around people who are much better than you, even if they make you feel like you're incompetent.
Oh,
That's the
I
only
think
way you're going to learn, right?
that is one of the greatest gifts military gave me is the ability to take criticism, to rehearse with other people before I go live, and to have like in that classic, after action review, sustain, improve, fix. Hey, we've just done this. Probably don't focus on what went well, but give me feedback on what could be improved so I can get better.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
that's absolutely something that's carried with me across. I want to come and focus a little bit on, PR and PA and all this kind of stuff. But before we do that, it's not an insignificant moment that you ran for the Senate last election. How did you end up there?
Uh, Jackie Lambie, I ran for Jackie Lambie Network, and
I think
she
I've
asked
heard
me
of
to
Jackie.
run.
I've heard of Jackie
Yeah. You
Lambie
might have heard of
before
Jackie Lambie.
somewhere.
Uh,
Yeah.
so so we joined the army on the same day at Kapuka. We're in the same platoon. And then years later, we
Oh,
ran into
unreal.
each other. I was actually carrying out my day job of I had a Senate inquiry where I was working for a business as a consultant, and I was training them to speak at a Senate inquiry and teaching them what happens, writing all their speeches, what they should say. And then I saw that Jackie was the chair of this, and I said,
Mm.
"Oh, yeah, I joined the army with her," and they were like, they're
Oh, really?
pretty thought they were pretty big businessmen. So, oh yeah, whatever, you know. And anyway, so we got there, and we went into the. I went into the room first to do a bit of a recce and check out, make sure, like, see if there's any journos there and everything, even though it's live streamed. And I was just checking everything out. And anyway, they came in, and they'd stopped for a break, and then we were up. And I walked over and I said, "Well, it's been a long time, Senator Lambie." And she looked at me, and I could see like all these things going through her head. And then I said, bloody, 18th of October, 1989, 32 platoon. And she went, oh my God, harps, like this. And we were hugging and everything. And then we were laughing and saying who we were still in contact with and blah, 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 as you do. And I turned around and all the big kahunas behind me sort of had their mouths wide open because I think they thought I was talking a bit of shit. Journos talk a bit of shit. And so it sort of happened from there. And then she asked me to run. And so I had to actually give up my full-time work to run because it was a conflict of interest. So I basically, it was pretty hard. And we were sort of running on the smell of an oily rag. And look, I obviously didn't get over the line, but I ended up with preferences with about 75,000 votes. But
Wow.
without preferences, I think I ended up around 58,000. So, it was great. And in fact, Chief of Army at the Legacy Ball the other night, because he'd last seen me when I spoke at one of the other balls, and I had pics with him, of course. And he said, oh, that's a pretty big deal pretty big deal to run for the Senate. And I said,
Absolutely.
it's sort of nothing compared to jumping out of helicopters. See, that's where I go back to.
Yeah.
Nothing compared to jumping out of helicopters.
What a cool story. And I love it that, back in that sort of, I'm a classic Australian egalitarian person where, we're all the same. There's no pecking order, in our country. Everyone's got a fair crack at, having a go. And just one of your mates from, whatever platoon that was, just so happens to be a senator, but no big deal. We're still just the same people that we grew up with. We just, bump paths. And this is where it's amazing with the military is I often feel like my military career was like a bit of a fly on the wall or a voyeuristic, watching other people succeed, and some of the most amazing people, whether they're like either brigadiers now or generals or warrant officer class ones or warrant officer class twos, the people that you connect with are just some of the most amazing people in the country. Just
Yeah,
yours just happened to be a
definitely.
senator now.
Yeah, exactly. And look, it was a great experience, and I was really honoured. And look,
Yeah.
Jackie and myself have similar values, as in
Yep.
we want to look after people who can't help themselves. Now, my
Yep.
foundation is helping people and looking after people, so we actually do have very similar values, as do the other guys who ran in the different states. It's just, as I said to Jackie one day, I say to people, you're Madam Lash with the whip. I'm just the fluffer, right? So she loved that. So, and I used to tell people when we went through Kapuka, like Jackie was the naughty one and I was kind of the good one, So she's, obviously being a senator, you have a hell of a lot more power and strength and ability for what you can achieve and what you can do. So yeah, I was just the fluffer.
Well, congratulations for giving it a crack. It's a bold move, and it's a move that comes, as you said, with a lot of self-sacrifice of giving up your career, a lot of financial sacrifice as well. But again, there's a theme of service that comes out, from this military background of continuing to contribute and to this great country of ours. Right. I'd love to spend the last bit of the pod you helping educate me, all right, and other
Yeah.
business owners out there, particularly about public affairs, public relations, government relations, corporate relations, because I feel a lot of business owners go through this journey, right, where they're good at something, so they do that in their business. Let's just say it's a carpenter or something. So I'm a carpenter, so I start a carpenter business. And then they go through this evolution of, I'm getting too much work here. I need to put a team member on. So then they put the team member on. Now I've got to get good at sales because I've got to convert more to feed my other team members. And it's like, well, okay, sales picking up. Now I've got to get into this sort of marketing thing because I've got to promote myself and to get more, leads, to get more sales. And then they're like, what about branding? And so they move on this journey away from operations towards, their vision, their mission, who they are and why they do it. And I feel that PR is almost an afterthought or something that happens a long way down the line. Like even in my journey is, of really getting into marketing. How do I promote and share who I am and why I do it? But PR or PA, and if you can unpack the difference,
Yeah, sure.
is how this is an amazing way to influence, promote, empower, and just get the word out about who you are and why you do things. So can we go into some of the
Yeah.
basics? PR, PA, government, corporate. Can you just spend a couple of minutes breaking those down, the difference, and what are they?
Yeah, sure. So if we just say public relations, I
Yep.
think public affairs covers everything. So when I was at Elba, I was a public affairs director for Australia, and I also
Yep.
did marketing and branding, but it's more corporate marketing. It's really important to remember that marketing is in a different faculty of the university. It's in the business faculty.
Mm.
PR and journalism is in the, arts. We're creative people, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
marketing is, meeting your revenue targets. If you can think of it in that way, that is marketing. What PR does is then protect reputation, promote what you're doing, gain credibility. So it's all of those. Whereas that marketing is more about the dollars and cents, right? And meeting those targets. PR is then basically trying to amplify that and amplify what you do. And just to be really broad, so it's easy, there's two main sort of routes that you can take with it. So there is earned media or promotion,
Mm-hmm.
if we want to just couch it as that. So that's where you put a media release out, like we did last week, and you hope to get some news coverage from it. It's not always guaranteed. You're at the mercy of the news cycle, you're at the mercy of the day, you're at the mercy of the mood of the bloody nasty chiefs of staff that get 5,000 press releases every day that come through, right? So it's 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 a luck of the draw, but then you have people with a few rings on the bark, like I have, who have contacts. They know that you're not going to pitch them BS, and also they know that you know how to write, so they're not going to have to redo something,
Mm.
and they know that because they know that you're sending them something that you think will be of value to them. And then there's bought. So there's bought media, which is basically guaranteed you're placing an ad and you can say whatever you want. So that's
Yeah, got it.
PR in
So
one,
this is where
really.
when I look at sydneymorningherald.com or like on my phone, I go through and I can see all the articles that are up there. But at the bottom, there is that sponsored or paid section. There's the bought at the bottom. The stuff at the top is what, people like yourself are pushing through. Um, I find it really interesting, and I never thought of it before, that some of the distinct basics between the like even they're not even in the same faculty, at
No,
university. So instantly that
I
is a
always say
very
that
big
to
divide.
people and they kind of get it, right?
Yeah. That's quite surprising. And marketing is all about, lead generation. We need to have X amount of leads to get X amount of sales, to get X amount of revenue. And, it's quite simple formula. Um, the power of PR and PA though, and you mentioned the ability to protect reputations. What about the opposite, building and destroying reputations?
Well, so do you mean those as two different things?
Yeah, sometimes our good
You can only
intentions.
destroy once you've built, really.
Uh, well, sometimes we do things in business and our best intentions backfire on us. Like with um, I'm a big fan of Virgin Australia.
Yep.
They support VBC by giving our members pilot gold program. So big shout out to Virgin. However, a couple of years ago, they had a thing where they said, "Oh, veterans, we'd like you to board the plane first." And it sort of became a negative thing. And, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
man, I'm trying to do the right thing here. I'm doing a great thing. But then all of a sudden the media gets a hold of it and they're like, how does PR sit in that kind of space where like from a protection perspective?
Well, obviously, Virgin, I'm not sure. It recently just did its IPO again, so it's backlisted
Yes.
again. So that's another level and layer of PR. So investor relations is a different level. Given that I did finance, I was really into that. But so for a listed company, you can say a couple of words, as I explained before,
Yep.
and it can affect your share price, right? And your duty is to the shareholders because that's what keeps your price up, right?
Mm.
So you've got to be really careful what you say when you're a listed entity, and it goes through about 20 different people, right? It's not the PR person who just goes, oh, we'll pop this out because it sounds good. So are you saying what should you do if you have a crisis? Because that's where,
Yeah.
obviously, given my background, I eat this stuff up. So I couldn't give you a whole answer here, but basically, you've just got to go in and analyze it. And you need the leaders to tell you the truth, exactly what's going on.
Mm.
And then you sort of work out the state of play there. But you got to stay calm. And as I say to some people, like, you haven't been subpoenaed. Well, I say this to one of my clients now. I say it to the CEO who was on live ABC radio the other day. I said, don't forget, you haven't been subpoenaed, not in a court of law. Like, you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
say what you want to say. Don't ever feel pressured. And I'm a big fan. One of my rules is 10 words or less. You know, don't feel that you need to fill the space. But you actually need to go from a point of truth. You also, I'm big at being focused on the business objectives for that.
Mhm.
And then quite often, depending on the talent, there's so many variables here, but depending on the talent, if they're really good, you'll just stand them up in front of the media, depending on how big it is and all of that. If it's really big, obviously that leader should be very polished at how they
Yeah.
press. And you see with politicians, you don't have to answer the question. You just keep saying what you want to say that's going to protect your brand, right? If they're not very good, and people agree they are not good at it, so everyone's good at different things, then you just stick with a written statement. So I'm the queen of hot issues briefs. I learned that when I worked for a treasurer. So you do up these hot issues briefs. So whatever the issues of the day are,
Yep.
you do 3 to 5 lines just as a holding statement. If media come through, they're approved by the Premier or you approve them ahead of time. So at Albert, I'll give you an example. Everyone knows what we went through there with the BMS. So within that crisis lasted for 6 weeks. It was awful, but we got our way through it because Paul McLaughlin, who was the MD and, general,
Mhm.
lots of people will know him, and Andrew Abbott, who was my chief of staff, who was a cavalry colonel, they believed in me and they knew that I knew what I was doing. We obviously had to answer into Israel, but you've got to stick to your lines. You've got to keep going. So basically, it comes down to that old rule that Joe Bjelke-Peterson said, the chooks want to be fed. So you have your hot issues brief sitting there. It's all approved. So by the time Paul walked in that morning when Andrew Green broke that story on ABC, which was half of it was BS, he approved, like he would question me, obviously, but we had approved lines ready to go so that when journalists rang, we just would reply back to them and send them out those lines. But I don't want to give away all my secrets here.
No, no secret sauce. You mentioned something there. I'm curious as to the proactive versus reactive side of PR here. Now, can we just use VBC as an example? So
Mm-hmm.
before I met you, within my, profit loss and budget forecasting, I didn't have a line for PR because I didn't really understand, if something went wrong, maybe I could engage someone like yourself afterwards to help damage control. But I'm really interested in, the investment in PR from a forward planning part of branding perspective. Now, just to be transparent, we only met a couple of weeks ago. Then this great news around the Queensland procurement policy came out. I was like,
Yeah.
and this is great news. Well, I think it is. Whether other people do or not's a different thing. I was like, Ange, can you write me a press release? Like, how much? Give me an invoice. Crack on. What should I be looking at? So, obviously with VBC now wanting to promote veteran enterprise around Australia, wanting to, get in with government. Now that Queensland has put some words on paper that revolve around veteran owned, how do I get the other states to domino over? How do I support things like the Veteran Business Awards that we're doing next year? How should I be looking at PR as a way to express my brand and promote what we do? And I'm asking as a bit of a case study so that other business owners can start thinking about how they should be investing in PR as well.
Yeah, so obviously we just covered reactive. So with proactive, from my perspective in what I do and my connections and experience, because everyone who's doing what I do has different experience and connections. But from a PR perspective, you'd look at all your possible proactive stories that you've got over a 12-month period. And obviously, it's an 80-20 rule. You'll have some things set in stone, the 80% that are coming up. And then you'll have sort of like the 20% on top of that that's reactive or opportune. I'm not talking bin fires here. I'm talking just opportune things come up, like what happened in your case last week. But then the flip side is, which we haven't spoken about, is the government relations. And as you know, I have a backstage pass to Parliament House, which is sponsored by an MP. And that is actually extraordinarily proactive, because you effectively are trying to introduce yourself to policymakers and then put forth an argument with evidence. So it's very journalism based for me. I do everything like this, and sort of put forward your case for why you see policy change is needed or would be good or would benefit, or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, this is super important. And this is also why I want to learn more about PR and government relationships as an investment that I should be putting in, because obviously we are passionate zealots around veteran procurement policies and veteran procurement initiatives, and the positive change that would have as a catalyst to create demand and jobs and employment for our community. It's through business. What's the difference between government relationships and lobbying? Are they the same, but different, or are they two totally different things?
Yeah, so it's the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
The interesting rules, which the Attorney General sets, sorry, I just had federal. So the Attorneys General in each state, and of course federally, they will set the rules for government relations. So if you're in-house, if you're within an organisation and not a consultant, you don't have to be on the lobbying register, it's called. But if you're a consultant such as myself, you are required to register on the lobbying register. Now, that needs a bit of PR itself, to be honest, because I think people often equate that with, big tobacco or, coal or whatever else is negative. I got nothing against coal. It keeps my lights on and my aircon on. So I don't have anything against it. I just hope they can
gives a lot of Queenslanders jobs.
Yeah, look, we just need to be trying to improve technology for that all the time. Yeah. That's a different, and I did work in resources, just to be transparent, for 6 years. So, I believe in it. So yeah, it just then a record is kept of who you've met with. But anyway, look, if you flip it around, it's nothing new, because everyone who politicians meet, all records are kept at those meetings anyway, regardless of if you're on the lobbying register or not. It's just a more formalised way of keeping track. So if I was with BHP, for example, it'd be Minister's Office had a meeting with BHP. If they had a consultant, such as myself, it would say, and Angela Harper, lobbying register consultant. Right. So, yeah. And then if any dodgy whatevers are done, everything's pretty transparent these days. So, and look, I've got to be honest, lobbying for veterans, it's not a hard sell.
Yeah, but this is look, to be honest, I'm a nobody. I'm some random army guy that did little bit of time, and now I do this thing that I'm passionate about. Like I don't know anybody, I don't have any like decent connections, but someone like yourself who has not only worked in the military, but then worked in the press club. So you're rubbing shoulders with these people on a daily basis, running for the Senate. How powerful are these? And it's a bit of a no-brainer question. These relationships, to be able to get access, like compliant access. We're not doing anything backdoor or anything here, but the power of relationships and great mates with a senator and all of that. How much of a difference does that actually make?
Well, everyone should be treated fairly because we are taxpayers paying politicians, and they pay tax too. Don't get me
Yep.
wrong. So, everyone's treated fairly, but obviously relationships do help because there's a trust factor built up, and then that comes back around to when you do good PR because you're building
Yeah.
trust, in a business brand, whatever it is. So I I don't want to judge too much here, but yeah, I'm just sort of saying that they do matter. And look, for the first time, maybe not being humble. So ironically, on Saturday night, I was almost hugging more people who were sitting at the front tables. And ironically, I ended up like with the politicians. And then one of them
Mm.
who was there was telling me, was saying to me, had I thought about running for the Libs in the next election? So,
No?
and then even one of the ladies, I can't remember what, she was a president of something. She was up on stage giving a speech, and I was talking to her at the end, and she said, "Oh, are you running again? I hope you run again," something like that. So it's you do end up, but that's also as a journalist, like, I mean, first time I met Richard Branson, look, I could talk underwater with a mouthful of marbles, but I was speechless. And I was always so serious as a politician. Like I was very as a journalist, I was very respectful, but I sort of kept my mouth shut, asked my question, blah, blah, blah. But when I interviewed Richard Branson for the first time, I was like, oh, oh, oh. So yeah, I do lose my stuff sometimes. But yeah, so
That's fair.
journalism really helped with connections. And also, working in the field that I do, you just get to meet a lot of people and hang out. And if you're half a decent human being and you work hard, then you're halfway there.
So PR, obviously, I
Mm-hmm.
love the brand. I love the brand name. Tell us, summarize what you actually do, because someone like me who's now been educated and informed about the power of PR and government relations, and this is something that I need to invest in to achieve our. So, to be honest, the gold-plated solution, the goose that laid the golden egg, would be a federal procurement policy for veterans.
Mm.
Now, that's the thing that we're aiming for. We believe that would not only be obviously about recognition of the veteran community and their service, but more importantly, I believe it would be a positive catalyst and a return on investment for the training that the government's put into us. The
Yeah.
government has spent huge amounts of money training us in all these different kind of roles, and I believe this is actually a positive investment in productivity outcomes for the nation. And empowering amazing people that have been highly trained and are highly skilled to go into enterprise and entrepreneurship is a win for the nation. Obviously, I can't articulate that as good as you can, but what kind of things do you actually do? And if people are out there listening and wanting to know about PR, how can you help them?
Yeah, so harpr. So, my name's Angela Harper. So, and I do PR. So it's a bit of a spin. If I in PR can't put a spin on, a brand name,
You're
then
doing
what
something
hope
wrong.
do I
Yeah.
have? So, hey, just judge my business card and you'll know I've got a little bit of talent.
Yeah.
No, so basically my specialty is PR, reputation. Obviously, crisis. I was made for a good crisis or a good
Yeah.
issue, and that government relations. So, connecting people and all of that. Bit of hard work thrown in, but it's just talking to people like yourself, educating you on what I can do, and then also having those realistic expectations in there that, I'm not a genie in a bottle. I can't magically make things happen. But if you do steps A, B, and C, then in my experience, you're halfway there, right? So
Yeah.
just doing that, but also having the access that I have as well with my 3-year pass that I have to
Yeah.
Parliament House in Canberra. That is a big deal because you can, other than getting signed in when you first go in, you can have however many people you want with you and walk around and access basically most parts of the building within reason,
Yeah.
of course.
And well, to sort of wrap up, a very brief overview of our very brief relationship over the couple of weeks. Thank you for jumping on and supporting the collective effort, which is VEDX. Really excited to be doing that in Canberra next year.
Well, that's another
But also,
great that's another great example of my
yeah,
connections because, we're trying to achieve something, in that big white palace in Canberra.
yeah,
And it turns out the person who has to approve it, I know. So
yeah.
it's just, it's good fortune.
There's that, and we really appreciate, look forward to your contribution to that. But then there's also the way that you've been able to help me with that media release. Like I don't know anything about this stuff, and I could bumble around and write something up and stick it on LinkedIn or whatever. But number one, it wouldn't be articulate and short; it'd be waffle. But to be honest, and I'm not going to talk out of house, between what you charged us, but the investment was surprisingly lean, extremely valuable, and I really appreciate you being able to jump on and do that at short notice. And there's a difference between, like for example, I could fix my car, but is it the best use of my time? And am I going to do the right job? I think if you're considering either reactive PR or proactive government relations, it's about getting the right people with the right expertise and experience to do the job properly once. And ultimately, the work that you did for us in VBC was not only very cost effective, but had more impact, was done better, was done faster. And I just want to say thank you for doing that. And P.S., you got to send me that invoice. We're a business
I
show here.
did. I did last
Have you?
night.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I got
I
to
did
check my
last night.
inbox.
No, I because I had a virus. I've been spending I'm probably 2 weeks now catching up on
Yeah.
everything. I had a lot of stuff to catch because I'm also on another board, and I do a lot of pro bono work. Thank you, Pete, for
I
putting
don't
me
want to
on
throw you
to
the deep
Mr.
end.
Mr. Caligari. So, hopefully I help them out a bit too because, get on the front page of news.com. I
Yeah.
don't know. I was thinking about him this morning coming on here, thinking I must shoot him a text and ask how it's going. So, yeah.
Well, I am thinking with the new Queensland procurement rules that have come out that getting a veteran-owned business significantly contributing to a government project might be something hopefully for the Courier Mail to pick up one day. So we'll be tapping on your door sometime soon.
Yeah, well, I think usually people in PR are probably worst at promoting their own businesses. See, your talent is running a business. I'm not very good at it. I'm good at my little area.
Yeah, well, if you wanted a talented PR person or government relations, get in touch with Ange. All of her details will be in the show notes. She's pretty easy to find. Angela Harper. Get her on LinkedIn. But Ange, thank you for you supporting what you do with VBC and VEDX. Thank you for your expertise in helping us out and really just opening my eyes to a different way to achieve our end state. And I think with what you have to offer, potentially we could achieve our end state faster with more leverage and less grind. Like this classic work smarter, not
Less
harder,
drag.
is
Yeah.
I think a
Yep.
really good way to describe PR and government relations.
Yeah. And, mate, who else out of the veterans running their own PR shingle can mosey on straight up to the press gallery, walk down the hall, and
Yeah.
hang shit on half of the journos? Or but probably not half now. Half of them
Hey,
probably dead.
look, and I'm not expecting to like drop breaking news because there's, no one's doing this anyway. But are you still tempted to go back into politics one day?
No, I need clients. That's what I need, because I had so long where I was out of full-time work. I have some part-time work at the moment, but I desperately need a couple of regular clients. So yeah.
Done. Well, if you need PR, if you need government relations, get in touch. Go no further than Ange Harper. So, Ange, thank you for joining us today and sharing a bit of your time. Have a
No
lovely day.
worries. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
But yeah, this is Pete Liston. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast. Great to meet Ange today. And just before I go, if you haven't already seen, the VBC app is now live on the App Store, both Apple and Google. So just get on there, go to your App Store or Google Play or whatever it's called, and look up Veteran Business Community and introduce yourself. Get onto the app. My name's Pete Liston. This is the VBC Pod. Out.